Hello, my name is Silverstreak, and this is a tutorial for GDevelop 5 on how to implement Coyote Time in a platformer. One of the most important things in a side-scrolling or platforming game is how the player character feels to control. There are many examples of both good and bad feeling controls in games, but a recent example of exceptional controls in a platformer is within the game Celeste. For more details on why Celeste feels great, Game Maker's Toolkit has made a fantastic video titled, "Why Does Celeste Feel So Good to Play?" which I'll link in the description below. One of the key components that I personally wanted to figure out was making a jump feel good. In Celeste, this jump has a function sometimes called Coyote Time or a Coyote Jump. So, what is Coyote Time? The name stems from an old Looney Tunes character named Wile E. Coyote. When he runs off a ledge, he doesn't immediately fall until a certain amount of time has passed or he looks down. In Celeste, Coyote Time refers to the amount of time after the character's hitbox has left a ledge, where they can still jump while falling. After some digging and tinkering in the systems, I've discovered two different methods that I personally feel work well to create Coyote Time in GDevelop 5. One which I call Coyote Platforms, and one which I call a Coyote Timer. We'll go over both in detail. So one of the first things that I want to show in the system is what the default platformer controls look like in GDevelop 5. This is without any extra functionality, and this is just using the GDevelop 5 platformer tutorial built into the system. If you watch me run around, everything looks mostly okay. My jump looks fine. I can touch on different things. I can jump on this platform, not a real big deal. But there's a kind of almost like a gap between my ability to jump and where I want to jump. So I can get pretty good at it if I kind of go early. But if I'm trying to get a pixel perfect jump, like, hey, let me get to the end of this platform and then jump so I can get the most distance, instead, what really happens is I just fall. Sometimes I can get it good, sometimes I can get higher, but really, if I'm really watching where the character's feet are, I'm just going to fall. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the most important reasons is that computers are precise. They're not going to guess when you get past a certain point, which means as soon as your character's hitbox gets past the end of that platform, you are falling. The computer's like, all right, you're now falling. Which means even though our eyes and our brain are connected in a very fast method, we're still never going to be able to consistently hit the space bar, the jump button, whatever controls you may have, faster than the computer can say, all right, now you're falling. The other thing is, in a lot of cases, platform games don't have the same hitbox as what is visually appearing. In a lot of cases, the hitbox is just a square around your character, which means you may have more or less time to make that jump that you want to make. So this is one of the things that Coyote Time seeks to solve. It is a general game concept method. So we're going to go ahead and go over one of the examples that I've made on how to implement Coyote Time, and the first one is going to be Coyote Platforms. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to my Coyote Platforms example, which is just a copy of the default platformer again with some additional events. And I'm just going to click over to it here because I already have it open. And I'm going to start the preview. Now, for the most part, everything looks the same. You're not seeing anything weird about these platforms. What I'm going to show you, however, is I can now much more consistently make that pixel perfect jump that I want. No huge deal. It's just happening. And so the reason why this happens is through some really neat, I'm going to call it trickery, but I'll show you how that works here in a second. And the way that I'm going to show you how that works is through a neat function that Wishforge Games showed in one of their earlier videos. I highly recommend you check out their channel. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit a key on my keyboard, and you now can see everything that is normally hidden as part of the game. You're seeing the player's hitbox behind my character, and you're seeing these hidden Coyote platforms along with it changing color. So what's really happening here is I've got another platform that is placed exactly where this platform is and is slightly wider that I can run up to without any real problems, and it turns on basically when I'm touching it. When you see it as green, the platform is actually a platform. When it's red, it is not a platform and I just fall through it. So to show as an example, if I get to the edge, I fall through that platform if I stop moving. So the only time that this platform is active is when I am on top of it and I am moving. If I'm jumping, it's off. If I'm falling, if it's off. If I jump under it, it doesn't work. And so that's a few different things that are occurring here, and we'll walk through each one. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the preview here, and we're going to go into more detail. So to create a Coyote platform, all I did was create a sprite, and we'll just click here, and we'll click sprite. I named it, we're going to call it Test Coyote. I'm going to go ahead and add an animation. For this, I've already got the object created, so just to show it, I'm going to go ahead and do this and hit that. We would call it test. We're going to hit save. Got an image now for my platform. The behavior that I'm going to add is the platform behavior. I'm going to make sure that it cannot be grabbed, and I'm going to make sure it's a jump-through platform. This is important. If it is not a jump-through platform, there is a chance that you could be moving while jumping from underneath the platform ledge, and the platform turns on. You don't want that to happen because your character will get stuck or will get knocked back down like they hit a ceiling. So you want to jump through platforms so you can jump through that Coyote platform while it's there. So I'm going to delete that just to show you my actual one, since that should be set up the same. Here's my Coyote platform. There's my object. There's my sprite, my animation. Here is our behavior. Again, platform, can't grab it, jump through platform. Now, events-wise, this is a little bit interesting on some testing that I did, because you do want to get your events set up in an order so they're not constantly running on every single platform. The reason why is you want it to affect your game's performance as little as humanly possible, and if it's running on every single platform at all times, the more platforms you have, the more logic that is occurring, the slower your game will be. So we've got some neat trickery here. At the start of the scene, for each platform, I'm creating a Coyote platform at that platform's location, minus a little bit, and at that platform's height, the exact same height. So the reason why this is important is you can, using this method, manually create the Coyote platform for every single platform you want. And that is actually one of the benefits of this method. If you don't want every platform to allow them to make this type of jump, this is a way where you could manually modify which platforms give Coyote time and which platforms don't, or which types of platforms give Coyote time. Because if you have multiple types of platforms, which the default example does, you can make it, hey, it activates for this platform and the moving platforms. Or I only want it to happen on platform that has the art of maybe like a hook at the end, and then you would put that as here. And so the way that this is done, just to show, is you right-click on an event, and click on Add Other, and then you choose For Each Object. It'll show up down here just for now. And then you choose the type of platform, and then you start adding your events, which we'll go through and again show in a second. The other way you can create it is this plus button up here and choose For Each Object. For me, I wanted just this one type of platform, and then I chose Create Object. And then I selected from the list my Coyote platform. For the X position, I'm going to go ahead and click here. I'm going to say Position. We're going to find the X position of an object. Then here, we're going to select our platform. That builds our expression. This expression builder is something that I recommend no matter what your skill level is, because you're never going to exactly remember the expression you want at all times. It's very useful. Now, I don't want the Coyote platforms to be always positioned even with the platform, because otherwise then you're only going to have one side that gives you the Coyote time. So I want my Coyote time to be 16 pixels. So I want the platform to be centered and have 8 pixels on each side. So I'm going to go ahead and say -8. Y position, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. And I will show you how the type ahead works. We're going to go ahead and do platform. Hey, there's our platform, and we want it as Y. Hey, there's the Y function. That we're going to leave exact. The layer, you don't have to select a layer, but for my own purposes and my recommendation is do select a layer every time so you don't forget to do that if you're using it on a layer that isn't the base layer. All right, so we've got that, basically the same thing. Even though these aren't right next to each other, these will act the same. And so this event is part of at the beginning of the scene, and that is to make sure it only occurs once and before the player character can do anything. Now, This part here is, again, at the beginning of the scene. It's, again, for the Coyote platform. Or, sorry, it's in this case, it is for each instance of the Coyote platform. And if the platform is in collision with, or if the Coyote platform is in collision with a platform. So what is happening here is we are changing the width of that Coyote platform to the same width as the platform, plus 16 pixels. So it is 8 pixels wider on each side. We are then changing the height to, in my opinion, I set 20 because I don't want it to be the same height as the regular platform, but I don't want it to be too small to cause collision issues. And then I change the position to make sure that it is still, after resizing, -8 pixels from the start of the other platform. So basically, this is going to be centering it because of our width. You could do some more advanced math and more advanced expressions if you wanted. Say you wanted to make this, but in general, manually setting this is the easiest way to do that. So if I were to do plus 20 pixels, right, it's going to be the platform width plus 20. I would then set this to the platform X position minus 10. That gets it to be even with your platform on both sides. The other thing that I'm going to do is hide all Coyote platforms, and that is just because you don't want your your player to see those objects. All right, so that's all the beginning of the scene. That's what we would consider the initialization. Now, the actual behavior of the Coyote platform. For each Coyote platform, which again was one of those for eaches that we showed you earlier, we're going to go ahead and add collision, which again, we would just click on here and say collision. And then you can select your object. You will see on these examples, I'm using player in the Coyote platform. That's just how I set it up at that time. You could select platform or the player hitbox object and then select the platform. In this instance, you want to make sure this setting is set to no because we don't want to be inside the Coyote platform. We want it to be touching it. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. Hey, look at that. It's almost exactly the same. Now, the big key factor here, the thing to make sure that your performance is not destroyed, is you want to be sure you are only doing the following items if the behavior of that platform is not active. So we'll show what that means here. We're going to search for behavior. We will click on behavior activated. We will search for our Coyote platform. And we're going to say, hey, return true if the behavior is activated for the object. Well, we actually don't want it activated. So we're going to say invert. There's our function there. And then for my personal usability, I make this a sub event. But we're saying if the behavior is off and the player is moving and they are not jumping and they are not falling, turn on the behavior. I'm also changing the color. You don't have to do that. That was just for a visual representation for this demo. You could do that if you really wanted to, but you're not going to see those objects because we hid them. And then only do it once because you don't need to keep turning on the behavior since it should only trigger if the behavior was off before. Then our other option is, okay, so it's on. Well, we want to turn it off after a period of time or under certain criteria. So we're going to say another underneath the repeat for each instance, if the behavior is active, and if one of these conditions is true, which is if the player is falling, if the player is jumping, if the player is no longer in collision with the Coyote platform, or if both of these are true, if all of these conditions are true. If the player is not moving, but they are in collision with the platform. This means that someone can't just walk out on the ledge and then just sit there floating in the middle of the air. Not a thing that you want, right? And then what we do is we don't have a trigger once on this instance because we want to make sure that it processes through in all the different instances or all the different scenarios. And it should only happen when that behavior is active, so we are good. And then what we're saying is turn off the Coyote platform's platform behavior. Let the character fall, right? Those are the functions here. So let's talk about the positives and negatives of this type of Coyote Time. So I would probably not recommend this behavior if you're going to have wide, hugely varied levels with a ton of the platform you're going to use for it. There's too much effort in getting all these extra platforms generated, and it will eventually bog down your game. However, again, as mentioned earlier, if you are going to have only a specific type of platform have the Coyote Time, if you are doing maybe a single scene game where you're just moving around a certain scene like an endless runner and you're destroying your platforms so they're not on there, this may make more sense in that specific use case. However, it may not. This is why we have multiple options. So the other method that we're going to talk about is what I call a Coyote timer. So we're going to go ahead and load up that scene, and we will start that preview. So a Coyote timer, again, this is just a copy of the platformer scene. I'm just going to go ahead and go over here. And if you watch, I can pretty consistently make these jumps. However, if you watch really closely, you can actually see my player character starts to fall on some of these jumps. Now, this is actually quite a bit closer to how Celeste does their Coyote time, and I will show you why here in just a second. One of the things that I want to show here is that we actually have a timer. So if you see this here, you can see I've got a timer that is actually running, that is resetting. We'll just show it here. Hey, it's running up. Now if I click on that, it is resetting. Hey, look at that, it's resetting. So what this is actually doing through events is kind of interesting because it seems simple. Go ahead and close out of that. And we will go over to the events here. You can ignore these debug items. These are just to show that timer that I was showing you. What is happening here is when my player is in collision with the platform that I want, and again, this could be your hitbox and probably should be, reset Coyote jump as the timer. You will also notice I do not have a trigger once here, and there's a few reasons for that. While I am on the platform, I want to be resetting the timer. I basically don't ever want it to lose. And there's a few reasons for that we'll go into on the next event. So just to show these events here, if I search for timer, we are going to choose the scene timer. And a lot of these events can be done at the same thing. You can do unpause or start or restart. For our purposes, we're going to do start or restart a scene timer. And then we did Coyote jump. Our collision is the same exact collision we did before. So on these events, we are doing the timer of Coyote jump is greater than 9 seconds, but inverted, which means that, hey, this event will only fire if it is actually less than 0.09 seconds. We are also saying that the player has to be falling for this event to work, and that's important because these two things combined is what makes this event work. If I am falling and the timer is less than 0.09 seconds, allow the player to jump again. Which means that you are actually able to jump in midair as if you had some type of double jump. And it is occurring within 0.09 seconds. The reason why I chose 0.09 seconds, Celeste works off of a method where it is 5 frames before you actually fall. So you have Coyote time for 5 frames. If you're working on a 60 frames a second game, 5 frames is roughly like 0.8333 seconds. So I did less than 0.09, and this game is set to 60 frames a second to make it be relatively close. You'll again notice that there is no trigger once, and that is because of how the allowed to jump again event functions. The event action for how to jump again or allow to jump again says you must call this action again every time you want to allow the object to jump. So if we had trigger once, what this means is the first time that these conditions are met, that split second, we'd be able to jump again, which is not what we want because we're never going to really be able to hit that jump at 0.00 seconds. That just put us into what we were before. By not having the trigger once here, we are saying while these conditions are true, go ahead and allow them to jump again. And then it still only allows them to jump that once. You can actually watch. I'll just jam on the jump button here. Only get it the one time. Here we slam on that space bar. Overall, this is a pretty effective method of doing Coyote time, and is probably the one that I personally will proceed with. The biggest, I would say, drawback to this method is that you're going to have to tinker with it to get it to feel right. With the other method, you can visually see where the platforms are and increase them or decrease them as you see fit. With this method, you are going to have to say, well, is it 0.8 seconds or 0.9 seconds or 1.2 seconds? Whatever you may feel. The other reason that this is a drawback is your player will see your character visually start falling. So that is something else that you're going to have to live with. You may also have to run into issues where you're going to need a lot of different reset conditions because you have a bunch of different platform types. All of those are minor drawbacks, just like the drawbacks on the platform were relatively minor. Figure out which of these two methods actually makes more sense to you. Overall, I hope that these two methods were helpful and increase your game's playability, increase the amount of fun people get out of your controls. Thank you so much, and I hope that you continue to make stuff with GDevelop. Be safe and be kind to one another. Bye-bye.